I've been here 40 years, which is a very short time, considering the first people moved here and stayed 470 years. The next people came and stayed 330 years. And I'm the third set of owners, and we've just been here 40 years. The first people here were the Strelleys. And when they moved here, they built a castle out of stone. They lived in an Anglo-Saxon wooden building, which you would have seen at a sharp bend in the road. Well, that's completely fallen down now, and so they built it of stone. It's like the Three Little Pigs, isn't it? They worked out that they had to build it out of something more secure than wood. So they built this castle of stone. It was actually quite big. There's a bit of it left over there, which I'm sure you've seen. There's a bit of it over there, which is underground. They're quite a long way apart, and we reckon there was quite a big area, which was the castle. And that was in 1200. So they lived here, and probably what it was a walled area with certain buildings in the middle of it. That over there was one of the turrets. We've seen that. That area underground was another turret, but the top of the turret was lost, probably 500 years ago. The other thing that happened is that there was, beside that tower, there was a great hall coming this way. You can't see it, but there's a piece of moat out there. You can only see that in the light. But that light, during the day, you can see that there's a moat, and that was probably filled in about 1580. What happened is there was a great hall attached to that castle out there, and it fell down due to a fire and fell down in the moat. Well, that half filled up the moat, so they gave up the moat. The last people who were here, who were the Edges, they took over from the Strelleys. They didn't know about the moat. We found the moat when we started doing some digging, and when I've spoken to the Edges, they had no knowledge of it. Anyway, the Strelleys, first of all, they were brigands. Then they turned out to be more serious people, and they became aldermen in the city of Nottingham. Nottingham centre's about 4 or 5 miles out there. So they were aldermen there. They'd become more serious, whereas in 1200, they were rather like brigands. If they saw something in a village nearby, they went and got it, whether it was cows, corn, fuel, even land. They just annexed it for themselves. That was the way things were in 1200. And if you think about it, the kings of England at that time did the same. They went and took a great big chunk of France. Well, the Strelleys did rather well. Their wealth and influence increased until they got involved in legal actions. And so now I'm talking about 1600 to 1650. They had to give up their lands here, give up the whole estate, and pass it over to the person to whom they owed all the legal fees for the things they got into. And their lawyer was called Edge. So these here are the last generation of Edges to live here. So there's an Edge came in 1650, and this Thomas Lewis Kekewich Edge, born 1857, died 1931. That's his daughter. And if you look at that hedge there, you'll see his wife hidden in it. Now, he left the property to his daughter, even though he had sons. And that was a very unusual thing for somebody to do at that time. Normally, you'd have left a place like this with all the surrounding land totally to your firstborn son and nothing to the rest. Now, he didn't do that. He left it in trust to his daughter because his firstborn son had blotted his copybook. He had married a suffragette. This was so terrible in those days. So he was disinherited. The crazy thing was that he died in 1931 and women had the vote in 1918. So he was a bit late, wasn't he? But that's what he did. And he left the property in trust, so it didn't become hers absolutely. He left it in trust to his daughter, provided she kept the name Edge and didn't marry. Can you imagine doing that today? Well, it just wouldn't be countenanced at all. But that's what he did. And the crazy thing was that he wasn't an Edge. So we'd had all these generations from 1650 down to him. And what had happened when the first Edge came here, he was a lawyer, he had no issue. So he persuaded his niece to marry somebody who was prepared to change their name to Edge. So if you believe in the effect of the Y chromosome, it isn't continuous. And that actually happened 3 times between the first Ralph Edge and this man. There were 3 times when there was no male issue and they found somebody else to take the name. Why didn't they do that to her? She remained unmarried here for 50 years. She lived on her own in this building, gradually having the building fall down around her. When we moved in here 40 years ago, there was no heating, there was wind coming in through the windows, rain coming in through the roof. It was collapsing. Now, of course, she had to give it up when she died, so it was only hers on trust. But of course, it then had to go back to the family. And by then, there had been a number of generations down here, and none of them wanted it. It was all collapsed. So we took it over in about 1980, and we put a lot of effort in to try and get it back to the form it had. So if you think about what's happened to this building, it was built and rose to an important state and fell down because of the loss of the legal processes they're involved with. And then it rose up again. And then it's fallen down as Emily Mary Edge died in 1978, and nobody wanted to take it on. They had an auction when they sold all the contents, and the pictures in the main hall fetched more than the building. The drink, which was in the cellar, fetched more than the main building. So you can see the amount of money which was paid to the estate for this building was actually very small. And it's because it has done that, and then done that, and we're getting to an age where we might have to think about what happens next. Is it going to do that? Having got it into a better state, what's going to happen next? Come back in 50 years and you might know. So there we go. Short history of Strelley Hall.
Do you live here?
Yeah.
Is it haunted? Have you heard anything?
Oh yeah, it's all there.